Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Hawk, found at Quillful Writer on social media, and this is Nami Nation by Kai's Korner Productions. With December right around the corner, many of us are hunkering down for the holiday season and colder weather, and that's the perfect time to break out video games. A go-to option for many players has been Baldur's Gate 3. First released in summer 2023, this D&D themed RPG has actually seen an uptick in daily gamers compared to last year. With an increase of 20%, the publishing director, Michael Dowse, shared the credit for this boost with mods from the community as well as the Patch 7 release. Steam Deck users in particular are seeing a massive spike, with over 60% more daily players this year than when BG3 was first released. Amusingly enough, there have been a couple of sales and a wishlisted game in the Vatican City. Most likely, the customer out of the hundreds of people living there wasn't the Pope, but he has still been on the receiving end of many well wishes, and they hope he enjoys the game. On a more serious note, the Palworld lawsuit from Nintendo has some speculation surrounding it. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company were very detailed in their case against Palworld, lending it a lot of strength. The patent infringement lawsuit had plenty of groundwork to give it a solid base. Within a month of Palworld's release, Nintendo and the Pokemon Company had made their first move against this game. While there are several patents involved in this case, there is a crossover mod created in 2015 that could give Palworld an option to take out one of those patents. Because the mod was available 6 years before that given patent was registered, it could set a precedent in court. This case is currently limited to Japan, but it could end up in the United States, although US law complicates the matters because the nation is much firmer with digital inventions. Because it's only one patent out of several, it couldn't necessarily release Palworld from any obligation, but it could lessen the damage for this game, which has a largely US fanbase. Most talk of video games these days is centered on the Game of the Year awards. Some of the nominations are more surprising this year than in past years, and the main reasons for that are that there's fewer games relatively being released and diversity in the voting jury for the game awards. With newer perspectives and less to choose from, it creates a lot of opportunities for different games and different styles to be showcased. I, for one, have always turned to Game of the Year nominees and all the various subcategories to discover new games that might suit my tastes. But this year in particular, there's something for everyone, including a little fandom drama. If we look at just the 6 nominees for Game of the Year, it shows just exactly what sort of variety we're getting with these nominations. Shockingly, there was only one sequel from a major franchise, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We also had the playful, family-friendly platformer Astrobot. There is a spectacularly niche RPG, Metaphor ReFantasio, and a solo developer released an indie card game called Balatro that also received a nomination. And the very first game from China to get a Game of the Year nomination, Black Myth Wukong. And here's where the drama comes in. There was also an expansion pack, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. While many argue that an expansion pack doesn't have a place there, I personally think it makes sense if something has the narrative and technical skill. The exact medium of it shouldn't necessarily be a determining factor, but the fandom is definitely split on that. Overall, it's also very intriguing to see what observations we can make about gaming culture from these nominations. RPGs have become more popular, for example, probably while people are looking to escape from the real-world pressures of 2024. Bethesda didn't get any nominations this year, and Sony took the lead over Microsoft, with 15 versus 12 titles nominated for awards. Nintendo did fall behind, considering the delays for the Switch successor, but Japanese games overall seem to be more popular than those from Western publishers based on the number of nominations for each of them in their respective regions. And speaking of Japan absolutely crushing it, the Dragon Quest III remake earned the spot as best-selling game of the year in Japan within just 1 week. Selling over 800,000 copies for the Switch and PS5, they earned the top 2 slots for these 2 consoles. This meant that sales were 10 times higher than the rest of the top 10 put together. This remake broke a record from Dragon Quest over 7 years ago when Square Enix had its largest first-week launch in Japan with Dragon Quest XI on the 3DS and PS4. High demand is making the physical game difficult to find in the stores for some players, so digital versions might be easier to get your hands on if you want to play pronto. For us gamers, it's not news that having the right video game in your hand can absolutely boost your mood, but luckily, science is here to explain that to everyone else. Again, specifically, Power Wash Simulator from Square Enix was showcased in a study about mood boosts from video games. This marks a shift from the largely negative response to gaming from psychology, and moving towards explorations of how games can influence mental health. While most people will say they want to unplug to de-stress, there is the benefit of plugging in to unwind. The study in question gauged mood during gameplay with Power Wash Simulator. If the player's mood changed immediately, how much it changed, which players were affected or not, and what happened to someone's mood while they continued to play. Over half the gamers in the study were American, but overall the group came from 39 countries. All of them were adults that shared info from 5 gaming sessions of about 40 minutes. The median age was approximately 27. And the good news? Over 70% of players noticed some mood improvement, typically within the first 15 minutes and lasting the rest of the time they played. Of course, playing Doom would get very different results. Power Wash Simulator is a simple, solidly cozy game that is perfect for relaxing after a long day, and it's nice to have that documented for those of us who may not be in the know. The next time someone makes fun of a puzzle game or a cozy game that you have to help de-stress after a hectic day, you have science in your corner. Closing up where we started, Hasbro is talking about releasing a new D&D game where Larian Studios said they wouldn't be working on Baldur's Gate 4. Larian does have another project in the works, although it's mostly vague at this point because they haven't quite worked out exactly what this project is going to look like. While it is tempting to be excited that Hasbro said they want to continue the series, they have not shown they really understand their D&D audience, with a greater and greater divide between Hasbro, the parent company of Wizards of the Coast, and their D&D fandom. The thing with Dungeons & Dragons is that it's about being creative. You have a DM who put all of their heart and soul into the world they've made for their table, knowing full well that players are going to break this on purpose, and they roll with it. As a tabletop RPG, Dungeons & Dragons lets you do just about anything. Something that a video game can never fully recreate, but Baldur's Gate 3 got fairly close. And this is because Larian Studios loved the game. It helped create the experience of a DM who is just as invested in this as their players. Meanwhile, Hasbro has really let their greedy side show over the past few years. They've gotten more aggressive in their restrictions, going after homebrew content that some people make a living with and many players prefer to the core content. And the more they crack down, the more the community built up around D&D kicks back. This feud goes back to 2022 and possibly before, with Wizards trying to take a hefty 25% cut of all revenue from smaller businesses that were used to the existing open game license or OGL. Tabletop gamers that admire the creativity of this universe were simply not having it. And to see where this is at now, you can check out #OpenDND to see what's going on. Wizards of the Coast were also shooting for legal rights to reproduce and resell content from other creators, all without asking for permission or providing compensation in return. Not only does this impact smaller creators making homebrew content for innovative gamers, it's not terribly surprising that Larian didn't want to make BG4 in that environment. If you can take 25% of their revenue and give them nothing while you recreate and reproduce and alter their entire universe, it's not a very good incentive. And this is only the tip of the iceberg with monetary and copyright issues concerning Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. As it is, the gaming industry is thriving only on the creativity of the team behind each title at this point. A money-driven project with no soul isn't going to resonate with most people, but especially a D&D audience that prizes the creativity and exploration of a well-crafted world and beloved characters. There's a reason that the nominations for Game of the Year are all a 90 or higher on Metacritic. There's a reason that Baldur's Gate 3 is seeing more players now than when the game was first released. Basically, if Hasbro is in charge, I wouldn't get your hopes up. Stay up to date with gaming content by subscribing to our podcast on multiple platforms, and check out the KKP YouTube channel for other entertainment content. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.